Here's what's coming today on the Woodworking Network podcast.
Maybe it's your family.
Be careful implementing lean at home. I'm going to warn anyone who hears this.
Welcome to this episode of the Woodworking Network podcast. Join us as we explore the business of woodworking, big and small, and what it takes to succeed. I'm Will Sampson. Today's episode is sponsored by the Executive Briefing Conference. We'll be talking with lean manufacturing expert Brad Cairns. But first, I want to talk about not a gimmick. Considering how long lean manufacturing has been around, it constantly amazes me how few in the woodworking industry have embraced it and still treat it as some kind of a wacky fad. Lean manufacturing, as we know it today, is a manufacturing and business philosophy that promotes continuous improvement. It has its roots in the Toyota production system developed primarily by Taiichi Ohno and Shigeo Shingo in Japan between 1948 and 1984. It really wasn't on the mass business radar in the United States until James Womack, a researcher at MIT, coined the phrase lean manufacturing and wrote about it in his book, The Machine That Changed the World. But the roots of what we call lean today go farther back than that. I had a life-changing experience in 1984 when I had the privilege of spending a day with Shigeo Shingo at a factory in Oroville, California. I was a young newspaper reporter covering the visit by this supposedly amazing production consultant who I had never heard of. People from the factory were all excited and supplied me with a bunch of dense literature to prepare for the tour and my interview with Mr. Shingo. The printed extracts were full of jargon about SMED and JIT and Kaizen, as well as tales of production experiments at Toyota in Japan. I knew a little bit about business and manufacturing because I'd put myself through college with a small manufacturing business that I had started, but I still felt way over my head. Then when I got to the factory, I met Mr. Shingo and interviewed him mostly through interpretation by his adult granddaughter. I immediately became a fan. The humble Mr. Shingo confessed that most of his ideas actually had their roots in early 20th century American efficiency experts like Frederick Winslow Taylor and Frank Bunker Gilbreth. Back at my newspaper, my editor and colleagues all thought I'd lost my mind as I raved about how great this Shingo guy was and how his production efficiency principles could revolutionize manufacturing, and this factory in our town was on the cutting edge. My editor indulged me and gave me a huge amount of space starting on the front page to tell the story, but I suspect the story was dismissed by most readers. Today, nearly 40 years later, I think the same jargon that put me off before my day with Mr. Shingo has kept many people from exploring lean manufacturing. All the Japanese terms and acronyms are like some secret code that only consultants can decipher. And some consultants have made it even more inaccessible with programs like Six Sigma that layer more jargon and certifications on top. I guess that's good for the consultant business, but a few folks like Brad Cairns and Paul Akers have worked to demystify it. As Mr. Shingo explained to me back in 1984, it really boils down to continuously improving everything you do so you don't make bad parts and you make them as efficiently as possible. To the factory foreman that day, he explained how a process taking 8 or 10 minutes could be changed into seconds, while not making any shortcuts in quality. The principles are simple and apply not just to manufacturing, but to everything you do in and out of work. Why wouldn't everyone want to take advantage of that? Before we get to our chat with Brad Cairns, let's pause for a word from our sponsor. It's really easy for woodworkers to stay stuck inside, focused on their shops and factories and production. But over the last couple of years, the pandemic has forced them to be even more isolated than usual. It's even harder if what you want is to network with the top-level executives in the industry. Where and how can you do that? The answer is the Executive Briefing Conference, coming this September at the spectacular Broadmoor in Colorado Springs. This is an unparalleled opportunity to boost your business with intelligence on techniques, tools, and technology, and to feed on inspiration from real leaders in the industry. Not to mention take in all the high-altitude hospitality, beauty, and recreation offered by the Broadmoor. Learn more at executivebriefingconference.com. See you there. Now let's talk about lean manufacturing with Brad Cairns.
Hello, I'm Will Sampson from Woodworking Network and FDMC Magazine, and welcome to the Woodworking Network podcast. We are live here today in San Diego at the Wood Pro Expo California and the Closets Conference and Expo here in California. And I am really pleased to have as my guest today on the Woodworking Network podcast, Brad Cairns, who is the leader of Quantum Lean and runs his own great door manufacturing operation, Best Damn Doors, in Canada. And welcome to the Woodworking Network podcast, Brad.
Why, thanks, Will. I appreciate you having me on here today.
Well, it's great. And you write some great columns that are really popular in FDMC Magazine about your lean journeys and the journeys of some of your clients and folks in this industry. But I kind of want to get really into just the basics right away. What is lean and why should people care about it?
I think the most important aspect to understand is lean is not extra. I want to emphasize that just kind of like right in the beginning, because some people shy away from it for that reason. They're like, oh, I'm already working 20 hours a day. What is this lean thing? It's something you're adding to my day. I'm not interested. But
no, this is something that's going to subtract.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's the exact opposite. So, and in its core, lean is just the elimination of waste through continuous improvement. And from there, we can call it whatever you want,
What was your revelation that got you into the lean fold?
How long of a story do you
Well, like I had this one day, I didn't know anything about lean or Toyota production system or whatever. And I had this opportunity to spend a whole day with Shigeo Shingo, who's one of the fathers of the Toyota production system. And it changed my life. What's your story?
Well, my aha moment was on a long drive. I had to drive to Quebec from Toronto, and it was about 7 hours or 8 hours. And I stopped in at a bookstore, and this is going to age me a little, but I bought a CD, and it was called The Toyota Way, and I couldn't believe that there was another way to run a business. I just, you started listening to how they do it and the principles that they run on, and it was so alien to me at the time. You can't know what you don't know, and I didn't know it. And I didn't shut off that CD for probably 3 years in my car, just over and over and over and over again. So I got hooked. And then it's usually easy. It's usually really easy to hook the one who's on the hook, right?
Right.
So the real challenge is now that I love it and I want to do it, that doesn't really mean anything because I need
you got to get
people.
The guys in the shop.
That's right. Your people have to do it. And so, my journey got, shortened, thank goodness, by the ex-columnist of the FDMC magazine, Jim Lewis. So we had, I had given up trying to get this lean, quote unquote.
It was too hard to get your people on board.
Yeah, and I just didn't know how to do it. And so we had Jim come in, and we stopped everything, and we did all of the training, 4 days of lean training for everybody. And for me, it was just like the blinders coming off when I saw how he got it across to our people, and that was it. There was no turning back.
That's great. And now you're part of a global community of as you call them, lean maniacs. and in a lot of different businesses, not just cabinet making or doors or whatever, but people that are manufacturing other products. And it all applies. It even applies in your regular daily life.
We have a little saying when we start to teach people, about lean or the Toyota production systems, we apologize because you're not going to be able to unsee what you're about to learn. You can't unsee waste.
You're going to see waste everywhere.
And it honestly, it makes you half insane. And that's probably why it's for about 2% of the world.
Yeah, I constantly see things and I say, why are they doing that? What is the reason that they're doing that in such an awkward way? And it's just, even if it's people, maybe it's your family.
Be careful implementing lean at home. I'm going to warn anyone who hears this.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. One of our mutual friends, Paul Akers, he always talks about fix what bugs you. And I think that's a great way to get it down in one sentence.
Yeah, we have absolutely adopted the fix what bugs you mentality, and we're part of that 2-second lean community. Probably 75% of all of my best friends are now in that community. And it's a global community. And once you get involved with like-minded people, it's just fantastic. I mean, everybody's going to be at a different stage in their lean journey. So you'll always have someone that you can reach out to take you to the next level. And you should be mentoring people who are just getting on board or a step behind you. It's a wonderful, what's the word I'm looking for? Like not chain of events, but it's...
it opens up a new door for the way you can operate.
It's phenomenal. And then when you get out there and start seeing what other people are doing.
But we're talking about this like we're sold on it. But a lot of people, I think they look at it like you're trying to convert me to some new religion or something like that. And then they look into it and they get put off by all the Japanese words, Kaizen, Kanban, Gemba, all these words that they don't know what they mean. And in, special terms. And then some of the consultants even make it even worse by making it more complex and that sort of thing. And I think what you said earlier is really the nutshell. What with this whole nugget of what we need to talk about is that it's just about eliminating waste. It's that simple.
It truly is that simple. I mean, if it was, I say simple, but I mean, that is, it can seem scary, but it's just like anything else. Have you ever just picked up a guitar and started playing like Stevie Ray Vaughan? I mean, it doesn't happen.
No.
just every day you just practice a little bit and you do what you can and you grow with it. So a massive part of lean is starting the culture shift. Start with you as the leader, and when you're sold, when you're like, okay, I'm taking my organization down this road, now we have to bring it to the people. And now we get right into the culture bit where you have to start changing your culture, because people love change, right? They're always on board. That's sarcasm.
Yep, I understand.
So the big question is usually, hey, this thing sounds awesome, but where do I start? How do I get this thing rolling?
Well, and a lot of people don't understand things that they think they're doing positive things for your business when they're really hurting you. I think the great example I like is if you're making screwdrivers, there's just two parts. There's a handle and a shaft. And you got one guy making handles and one guy making shafts. You need those two parts to make the screwdriver. If they don't coordinate, if they don't make the same number at the same time, you're going to have waste, because there's going to be too many shafts or too many handles, and you can't make complete screwdrivers. So once they understand that, and then they start working together, then it's hugely more productive. But I see places where, you got a machine operator and all he cares about is the output from his machine, because that's how he's getting measured. I made 600 widgets today, and so I am a hot stuff.
Yeah, that's the old tell me how you measure me and I'll tell you how I behave mentality. And we call that silo thinking. And definitely when you start creating that lean culture, you're looking to break down all of the silos, in extreme cases, the walls. We want to remove all of those barriers between departments. We want people to be comfortable talking to each other. And again, I'll just quickly circle back to that culture bit. Right? That's where that all happens. Well, how do you get all of these people to play in the same sandbox and be happy about it? And, for people listening right now, I will say that you got to get going on your morning meetings. This is where it all starts, and it's like, oh man, I can't shut down my shop for half an hour or 15 minutes or 10 or whatever you can give up, but start those morning meetings and just don't make the mistake of talking about work at them. I always say, if you can't remember what you were working on yesterday, you got other problems. You don't need to remind everybody, to get back to the widget making that, you finished at 5 o'clock yesterday. So, once you develop that culture, start to, you want to do the things like give gratitude, to everybody. We do some shout outs. So it's just when you don't have time during the day to say thank you, it's just a quick, hey, I want to give so-and-so a shout out. I saw they went over and above and did this thing. Exciting news that's going around the company, some highlights. You can talk about things like defects and problem solving. At the end of the day, you want a problem solving culture. And so if you have a bunch of people that are grateful, that are doing little team building things, and then when real problems happen, they're okay to walk across the shop and be like, hey Bill, I got this thing going on and I think you might be causing it. Can we talk about it? And that culture bit is the foundation. You can't really get going until your people are on board that it's not their fault. We blame the process, not the person, which is, we are totally born and bred to blame people for everything.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
So that takes like time and repeat. We blame the process.
And be willing
not the
to
person.
change the process.
Absolutely.
It's not, this is the way we do it. And that's the only way we do it. No. And I think the morning meeting is neat because, and you're right. A lot of people, they just are totally averse to it. It's just a waste of time, but it's not, because it opens lines of communication, even cross departmentally across your place. I mean, maybe somebody in a entirely different part of your plant has a great idea because of what he heard somebody was struggling with, and he can help them solve that problem. I know you do highlights with little quick and dirty videos and things like that, where somebody has made an improvement and they show their little video, and that's got to be inspirational to the rest of the people.
And we can go one step further with that is absolutely, I know it sounds daunting to some people, like, what, I have to make a video, but believe me, the technology's in your pocket. It takes 30 seconds. And then you have the opportunity to show that to your organization and use that for like internal inspiration, but get it out into the world, and you can literally inspire hundreds, thousands, help other companies that might be struggling. So that's the give back component to lean. We're always saying pay it forward. And so if you learn something, it's your obligation to pay it forward. So make a quick video, throw it out there, and help someone else learn from it.
And making a quick video, it's no different than filming your cat doing something stupid and it becoming the stupid cat trick of the month. That's sort of what you're doing.
Everybody knows how to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, you did say one thing that I think I would like to tie into a very critical part of lean, which is standard work. But we just 5 seconds ago said we want people to be autonomous, and you're don't do the same thing or how did you put it? Do it the way I tell you to do it, or.
I get what you're saying. You're
Yeah.
talking about, you want people to want to improve things and all, but you have to establish a standard. And then once you have something that is recognized as a legitimate improvement, then you change the standard.
Absolutely. And so that is a big pushback part we get when it comes to lean, when people are like, oh, we have to follow standards. You're trying to make me a robot. And like, why do I have to follow this standard? I thought I was able to make all of these changes, but we're very regimented on what is the standard. Let's follow the standard. And so I think it's worth the conversation to talk about standardization a little and how standards actually set you free. They allow you to be creative, but then why is the perception that you're turning me into a robot? So when we look at standardization, I'll quote Henry Ford, and he said, standardization is only the best we know today, not tomorrow.
Well, and I think too that there's a misconception of, a lot of people in this industry do custom work, and they say everything I do is custom, so I can't do lean. No, that's not true at all. But you have to examine, like what you were saying before, is that it's the process, and you got to standardize the process. If we're dimensioning stock, this is the way we do it. If we're shaping something, this is the way we do it. It doesn't matter if the thing is a different shape or a different material or whatever, or maybe that's part of the standard. When we're working with this material, this is the way we do it. When we're working with this other material, this is the way we do it. But the idea is this has a huge benefit, not only in just production, but also, everybody's complaining about not having enough employees and training new employees and then not knowing anything. You use that standardized work to make training your employees much more effortless.
Yeah, I was going to say we can easily, delve into some of the highlights of taking the time to standardize your work, and then we'll end with my aha moment about standard work, and start with just getting it right. Like, how critical is it to get it right the first time? And then now that you've got it right and you've standardized it, how long does it take you to train the next person? If without standards, you're going to lose 20% every time someone teaches someone something. So you have a standard. It basically is your mini curriculum to how do we train people. And then they have the standard that they can go back to after they've been trained. So they don't have to harass you again and again and again. How many times I wish we could see our audience that they'll nod their head when you go to work and say, but I told you that yesterday.
Right.
Right. And it's like people are getting frustrated. And it's like, if I was the employee, I would say, you're right, you did tell me that yesterday, but you failed to make a standard. So now I have to ask again. Sorry, But the standards too even apply to solving problems. Everything.
and communication, cleaning up the shop, anything. And the other thing that I like about all of this stuff, when we get back to eliminating waste, we're talking about eliminating waste from the customer's viewpoint and not necessarily just the shop's viewpoint. There may be some things that really add value as seen from the customer that might be interpreted as waste in the shop or extra time or whatever. But to get your people thinking from the customer's side, I gave a pricing talk yesterday, and I'm trying to get people to think that the only value that matters is the value as seen from the customer's viewpoint. Mm-hmm. And that's part of this that we're processing. And once you have your people on board seeing customer value as what the goal is, then that changes a lot about how they work too.
Yeah, we tell a story as part of our meeting like at my factory in the morning meeting. Probably, once every 3 months, it cycles around again of because everyone can relate to car shopping. And there's two cars and they're exactly the same, like 100% identical. But one is $3,000 more. And we say, well, which one would you buy? And hands down, everybody always says, I will buy the cheaper one if they're the same. And say, but the more expensive one, they took the time to walk the parts around the factory a little longer. They sanded past the point of necessity a little longer. They polished the undercarriage a little more and people start to go, oh yeah, right. As a consumer, I don't want to pay for that. We can't brag about the distance that our parts travel through the factory. We can't brag about suffering because of our bottleneck constraints. That's our problem. We've got to fix that. And how you fix that is just understanding waste and slowly eliminating it.
Yeah, no, that's great. But now, and I'm not sure how we can convince people here in just a little podcast, but the whole thing, and I know, your original mentor, Jim Lewis, he used to tell me routinely that he would go into places and they would save 30% by adopting lean training and lean principles, and nobody would believe that you could save 30% of your time or whatever by just changing the way you do things. We're not talking about buying new machinery or anything, or hiring more people or whatever. In fact, people are finding they may have even more capacity because of this.
Yeah.
And how can that be?
Okay, that's a really good question. So the first step to that is understanding the value versus non-value proposition. And if you ask someone, how much of your 8 hours do you believe you're adding value for the customer, from the customer's viewpoint? They'll probably say, I don't know, like seven of the 8 hours. And in reality, if we videoed a whole day and measured just the value added component, you're talking maybe 5% of your day is actual value added activity. So when we say, hey, we can double what's going on in your factory right now, it doesn't mean we're going to double the effort. But all we're going to do is trade some non-value added activity for value added activity. And if we're operating at 5% value added, we're not even, we're just saying, let's get that to 10. And you've doubled what you're doing. And now all of a sudden, the human brain is going, okay, that's possible. Because 10 minutes ago, it sounded like I needed to do 16 hours of what I'm doing today in 8 hours. And that is not possible. So, just understanding that value versus non-value is what makes that possible.
Everybody bandies about the slogan of working smarter, not harder, but that's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about eliminating processes and only doing the smart work and not doing at all the stupid work.
Right. And I'd like to just caveat that a little bit and saying, sometimes when we're talking and we're using that verbiage, like if you're new to lean, I think that might scare someone in saying, we're going to eliminate all of that waste. It's like, whoa, how if walking to the saw is what I have to do, how can I eliminate that? So we like to use the word reduce. We're going to reduce that waste.
Right.
So instead of saying, hey, walking to the saw is 32 steps, we can't eliminate it because you got to get there. But can it be 20? Can it be 31? It doesn't matter. Let's reduce it. And then all of a sudden the creative genius starts happening. And, typically people will blow past your expectation if you just lay out the path for them and ask the right question.
People are amazingly versatile and amazingly creative when you give them the chance to be. One of the tenets of the Toyota production system is that there are 7 kinds of muda or waste. But our friend Paul Akers, he added an 8th waste, which is wasting the brain power of your people. And I always think that's really significant.
Yeah, that's huge. You'll be amazed when you empower people to make changes and let them screw up a little, let them fail, and it's okay. We actually have made some videos before of improvements that didn't work, and we celebrated them. We're like, wow, look, that didn't work at all, but we sure figured that out, and now we can move on to something that maybe does work.
You have to fail to learn.
Yeah. Back to your point about like, what would we say to convince people in a short amount of time? I've never done this, but it would be interesting. Google it. Google it. Like, is lean bad? Has lean hurt my business or something? Like, I don't think there's any bad documentation on the planet that doesn't say eliminating waste is kind of the way to go.
I think some of the practical things that help get it across are things that people are not intuitive about. Like one of the talking about, trying to do a batch size of one or something like that. That's really not intuitive. We've all learned, we have to mass produce things by making a whole bunch of things at once and then going to the next step. And I like to tell people, well, if you have an elevator that only can take 10 people at a time and you have to get 100 people down from the top floor of a building, and they've got to wait for that elevator to go up 10 times to get that 100 people. But if you send those same 100 people down one at a time down the stairs, they'll all get down there before your 100 people get down in the elevator, which is why in buildings the firemen tell you use the stairs, not the elevator. But that's a lean tool.
Right, and this is something that we should really probably talk about, because if you're just getting into lean, for sure you have heard the term single piece flow.
Right.
And to your point, you're saying, well, it's faster to build things one at a time, and that is true. I could hear like 5 people just shut off their radio.
That's true to a point.
Yes, don't stop listening yet. Theoretically, it's true. It's usually 50% faster to build things one at a time, but that's if you're stuffing envelopes or making paper airplanes. When you're in a manufacturing facility with different processes, different process times, statistical fluctuation, wandering bottlenecks, building things one at a time is the only way to guarantee you'll be bankrupt by the end of the day. So the one piece flow is the concept, the North Star that you base decisions on, but you don't ever arrive there.
Well, you have to have the people and the processes and the equipment to enable that to happen.
Right. That's right. We're especially in woodworking, we're really limited by the equipment. They're still building machines bigger. For everyone building spray machines, start building smaller ones, please. They're just pushing batches everywhere, and so those limitations are real, and you can't make a one-piece flow fit when you have a
it
batch
has to
limitation.
match what you have.
Yeah. So when you hear that term, don't freak out and don't think, that's what we have to do. Think in terms of, well, if one is the way to go, and I'm building batches of 50, 100, what happens when I reduce that? So we'll always advise, don't improve more than 50%, because if you're right, great, you got a 50% improvement. But if you're wrong, you haven't
hurt yourself.
You haven't hurt yourself too bad. Exactly.
Right.
So you always want to shoot for that 50% mark. So if you're doing batches of 100 and you hear about one piece flow, all that's saying is, how close can you get?
Right.
Let's try batches of 75 and see what happens. If nothing happens, if you don't notice the difference, you haven't gone low enough yet. There will be pain. And so knock off another 25. And if you haven't noticed anything different, knock off another 25. And if you do that, you will know exactly what I'm talking about when the thing happens, because there will be a point at which that small batch size is really uncomfortable. And that is waste exposing itself. Your opportunity, stop, don't go any lower, fix the thing, and then now slowly creep down.
Now, one of the things that we constantly are hearing, and I know you're hearing too, in these times is, with the pandemic and the supply chain nonsense that we've been going through, how can I possibly be lean anymore? One of the tenets of lean of just-in-time supply systems. Well, if the suppliers can't meet your demands, what are you going to do? And your automatic ordering systems, Kanban systems, what are you going to do with those things in this kind of an environment? How did you adjust?
Well, this is the question we get 500 times a day right now. I mean, you hit a hot spot. The reality of that one, I feel at least, is control the things you can control. As in, so how did I adjust? At our factory, MDF is our main product, and we had a almost impossible time to get it. It turned into a full-time job. One person, literally full-time. So if you don't have standard work in place, if you're not running the rest of your factory on a good, robust Kanban system, then that person's effort where it should be spent where it's needed is also being wasted looking for pens and paper and toilet paper,
right,
and other things, right? So we say, like, let's get rid of the stupid work so we can focus on what's really important. So there's no lean tool that's going to be magically pull truckloads of material or drawer slides, out of the sky for you. No, you're going to scramble like everybody else. But how much, if your competitor is worried about all 900 supplies and you're laser focused on just the 3 that are a problem because your Kanban's taking care of the rest, then you're going to fare better in that,
right,
environment.
Whether it's a crisis or just continuing work as usual, lean is the tool that helps you out and get there.
Yeah, there's no going back once you...
Well, I know we could go on like this forever, but we've pretty much run out of time.
Wow.
And Brad is going to be giving a keynote address tomorrow morning at the show here. And then if you're not at the show and you're just hearing this podcast on recording, you can contact Brad directly. It's quantumlean.ca. And Brad is always accessible and ready to talk to folks that want to talk about lean.
Talking has never been my problem.
It's great. Well, I really want to thank you for being on our podcast today, Brad. This is great. I always enjoy talking with you and seeing the great progress of shops that you work with and have helped out.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Will. It's been a slice.
Great. Talk to you again another time. Thank you for listening. That's it for today. If you're looking for more of our podcasts, you can find all of them at woodworkingnetwork.com/podcasts and in popular podcast channels. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Thanks again to today's sponsor, the Executive Briefing Conference. If you have a comment or topic you'd like us to explore, contact me at will.sampson@woodworkingnetwork.com. Thanks for listening.